YouTube, why not? So I decided over quarantine, so the past, in the fall of 2020 and into the spring of 2021, to start buying Gamecubes that were listed as for parts or broken or just as is, so untested, from various auction sites, and trying to repair them. This is not some sort of money-making scheme. The margins aren't particularly good here. Obviously, you can check on the running rates on Gamecubes that are functional on eBay. Typically you can get, 50, 60 bucks. If you're lucky, maybe 70 bucks. It's not a huge amount of money, and these cost anywhere from 20 to 30 bucks. And then sometimes you pay for shipping. And so you're out, close to 50 bucks sometimes just for a broken one. You have no idea what you're getting. So really, this is more of a fun exercise. I've done about a dozen cubes. I've got them in and I've fixed them. I put them back out in the wild. Again, I'm kind of shooting for cost here. It's more about saving something like this from the dumpster or from being dismantled. And yeah, so I figured for my very first YouTube video of this type, I would try to take something completely sight unseen. So I'm going to go ahead and flash up the eBay listing for this Gamecube. I bought it listed as for parts. They didn't give a whole lot of information about it. It said it was non-functional. And what I got is exactly what I expected. It's a little dirty, but really in fairly good condition otherwise. These silver Gamecubes are, I believe, painted, or it's a surface level color, whereas with the black and indigo ones, you can really scrub them really hard and it won't take the surface color off. So these are more prone, at least in my experience, to scuffing and for kind of deep stains, and it's really hard to clean them appropriately. So for instance, this up here is not just schmutz on top. It actually, and maybe we can get close enough to see, and it will retain focus. Let's see if I can do that. There you go. Ideally you can see this. Yeah. So what you can see here is it's potentially, you can see it's just the paint's rubbed off. So there's really not a whole lot you can do about that. So this may look like this forever. And there's things you can do. You can actually just replace the case. The guts of the Gamecube are pretty easy to, re-shell. But the whole point of this video, and hopefully if anyone's watching this, the reason you watched is to see someone like me, a relative amateur, although I have some experience, try to fix a Gamecube sight unseen. And so I just took it out of the plastic, I put it on the counter, and I hit record. So you're going to follow along with me. So I'm just going to walk you through kind of what I look at. So when you're buying something like this on a listing, typically they're going to take a picture of every angle. So what you want to do is you always want to pay attention to the ports, right? Because where does water get in? It gets in through the holes in the case, right? It doesn't get in magically. So if you don't see any sort of corrosion or rust, you're in good shape. It's hard to see from where the camera is sitting, but I'm not seeing any sort of rust or even really a whole lot of dirt. I mean, this is a little scratched and scuffed up, but there's not a whole lot of yellowing, which means this wasn't in contact with UV light or sunlight for a long time. One other thing to look at, see how shiny the metal is and you'll see what that is here in a second when I take the case off, but typically if that's, if you see any rust or if you see any sort of discoloration, there's a good chance that A, it was stored somewhere humid, or B, there was some sort of actual liquid in there, but I'm not seeing a whole lot. And another thing is this button works great. One of the first things that happens on older Gamecubes is this button will get really seized up and will cause a big problem. But, well, immediately something I'm noticing, and hopefully you can hear this, I'm gonna rattle this around in front of the microphone. Hear that? The Gamecube shouldn't make any noise when it is moved around. It's a pretty compact system. There's no loose parts in there. Typically any electronics you buy shouldn't be rattling around. So something is loose. And I'm also noticing on the shell, maybe you can see this corner. It's not just a scuff. It is really just beat up. And see that? See where it's chipped all the way down into the base plastic where it looks a little bit a different color? That gives me pause. That to me makes me think this may have been dropped or something, and that is what's loose. So I have no idea what's loose. There's only a couple moving parts in this entire thing, and that's going to be your it's going to be your laser unit, which is going to be a problem. So let's open her up, and well, immediately I can see a bit of an issue. So let's get in closer. You see the laser typically, let me see if I can get past there. Yeah. See the laser? I'm gonna use my tweezers here and hopefully not destroy it. See that? That should be in the center of the track, that little thing. And see it is completely loose. I'm being careful, obviously, not to damage the lens there, but that is not a good sign. So what I'm seeing is the laser unit looks to be, it's really hard to tell with this thing on here. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just take this case off so you can see what I'm seeing. But my guess is that, oh boy, the laser unit is damaged. That's all I know right now. I'm not going to predict too much because I hope it doesn't come true. Because obviously it'd be fun to, on my first video like this, actually fix the problem as opposed to not fix the problem. So anyway, what you're going to need to get into any Gamecube is this game bit driver. It's a little kind of inverted star bit, and it's super easy to get these 4 screws here dislodged. I'm going to go ahead and get these loosened up. I wonder if anyone's been in here before. So sometimes when you buy these systems secondhand and for parts, there's evidence that someone's been in there before you. I'm not seeing a whole lot of evidence about that. These seem to be tightened to a pretty standard tightness. They weren't over tightened, which is something that a lot of people might do. But it seems pretty standard so far. So here are your 4 screws. I'm gonna go and put these in a little container. Never lose track of your screws. Also, you're gonna see me put all the screws in there. It's not that big of a deal because there's only 4 different types of screws in the entire system, and it's really hard to mix them up. You just, don't worry about separating them. So once those screws are off, this whole section lifts up and off. And so here's your top unit. All of this is contained kind of within there. You've got all of that. So put this off to the side. And hopefully now you can see a little bit better what I'm talking about with this laser unit. It's really not supposed to do what it's doing right now. And you see that? There's nothing holding it in, which means I've taken enough of these apart to know that the way that these are held in place is that there's 2 rails that run like this, and the laser unit itself sits between them, and then a gear runs, it's like a rack and pinion. I'm not an engineer, I'm not smart enough to know what the hell I'm talking about, but typically there's a long strip of teeth, which I guess is the rack, and or a pinion, I don't know, whatever. And then there's a wheel that moves it back and forth, and that's how the laser reads the data. It doesn't seem like the ribbon cable, which is that right there, that little gold piece, doesn't seem to be, well, it's hard to tell whether it's connected or not. So let's just go ahead and get down a little further. So this piece with just the shroud that covers the inputs, that comes right off. It's just hooked onto these 2 little things. And the same actually goes for this, the controller parts. You see here where it's kind of hooked onto these little posts. So you just take the edges and you pull it back. And I'm actually going to go ahead and take this all the way off just so that I don't get, well, actually I might not, because typically when I'm working with these, I eliminate all variables, right? I take it all the way apart. I clean everything. But if you notice, look how shiny all of this is. I'm going to go ahead and pull out some components from some scrap ones that I've gotten. I'm going to show you why I'm impressed at how clean this is. Very clean. You see this? Totally shiny metal. This I took out of a very normal used Gamecube. You see all of this rust, all of this discoloration. This is perfectly good to put back in. I mean, obviously you wouldn't choose this over a cleaner one, but it's not gonna, I mean, it'll rust in time, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But this would have been it's perfectly reasonable to assume there's gonna be at least a little bit of rusting, because, they get stored outside in a garage and it's a little humid and then it starts to rust a little bit. This is absolutely perfect. There's not any rust I can see at all. All the screws are shiny. I wonder, this thing must have gotten damaged and then it didn't work, and then someone put it inside of a climate controlled space for 20 years, and here we are, almost 20 years. So I'm a little suspicious of how clean this is, but we'll just see. So the way that you remove this laser unit, this is the whole laser kind of, what do you call it, platter and everything, is you actually have to take the whole section off. And the way that the GameCube is set up, it's very efficient. It's very modular. So this top portion down to here comes up. So everything from the top to right here comes up, and then underneath it is the motherboard, and then underneath that is the power supply. On this particular version, this is a DOL 001, which is the more or less the first revision. This is the one that was made in China. There was one made in Japan before that, which is like the original. But this one is like the more or less the first iteration, and so that means the power supply is down at the bottom. You can see this line here. This power line goes all the way down below. That's how you know. Well, that and the fact that there's a digital output. There's a couple ways you can know, and of course you can just check the bottom and see what revision you have. It'll say DOL 001 or DOL 101. So the way that you get this out is you take these screws out. So there's a screw here. There's 3 screws, 1, 2, 3, underneath this fan assembly, which we'll have to take off. A 4th one on this side. There are 1, 2, 3, and 4 screws on either side of these clips that are what ground the controller port assembly. And then there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws on this side, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 4 on this side. There's a lot of screws, and this one actually is inaccessible because you have to move the fan first. So always start on the fan side with this one and this one. So I'm going to go ahead and take these out. And then once we actually get moving, I'm going to fast forward to save you the trouble so you don't have to worry about it anymore. So take this out. I'm going to try to do this all in one long cut, by the way, because, you know, some people get all bent out of shape and say, oh, you swapped it out to make some sort of YouTube miracle so that people will watch this. Hey, it may not even work when I'm done with it. I'm actually not that confident because it seems like this laser unit's really screwed up. But, you know, just in case there's anybody who thinks that I'm trying to fake it, all one big take. So you'll notice that once I move this out of the way, it's still attached. So it's still perfectly, we don't have to even unattach it really. These 3 will come out, and I'm going to go ahead and fast forward because now it's just 3 and then all of the screws surrounding. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward, and then we'll cut back in right when I'm pulling it up. Okay, so that's all the screws out. I'm going to take these clips up. You can see these have a longer screw. Put these off to the side, and then this whole assembly will just lift up. So I'll very gently rock it a little bit, and up it comes. And remember when I said the whole thing is modular, this right here is a little plug that plugs into this socket on the motherboard. It's kind of hard to see with the light the way it is, but and then underneath the motherboard, this fits into another connector at the power supply. So the whole thing comes apart. Now, again, I cannot tell you how amazing it is. This is so clean. I'm trying to pull, this is the exact same part, like I said, that I pulled off of another one. And look at the difference. You can see just how much more grime and rust and everything is on it. And this is just perfect. There's not even a whole lot of dust. There's a little bit of dust right here, but not a whole lot. This is where the air gets routed kind of over the heat sink of the CPU down here and all the other kind of guts. And so it comes kind of, the heat, the fan blows it, you know, side to side through here. And that's where a lot of dust will collect, but just not a whole lot, really not a whole lot. So pretty amazing. So in order to get to what underneath here to see what's going on with the laser unit, the easiest way to do this is to remove this piece of shielding, which is pretty easy to do. There are, just zoom in real quick. There are 6 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And these little guys come right out, no big deal, and will allow me to have access to the underside of the laser assembly. So I'm going to do that. All right, so here's the last one. And then we'll take this piece of shielding up. Uh-oh. It's nice to have a magnetic screwdriver like this. I just fished a screw out from a very tight place. So this comes up and off. And then you see the underside of the laser assembly. And so just to kind of help you identify what's here, this is the connector for the laser unit itself, like the actual laser. This is the solder point for the spindle motor. This connector here is for the motor that drives the laser back and forth. And this is a little connector for this thing, which is the catch that when the lid is closed, it pushes it back like this to register. See that? When both of these are back, it registers that the lid is closed. And that's pretty much just like an on-off switch for the whole laser assembly, because if it's not registering it's closed, it won't spin. So let's just unplug everything, because in order to flip this over, we need to unplug everything. So I'm going to unplug this. Really quick. This one's a little trickier. You have to, this little black part at the front of this comes forward in order to release the ribbon cable. And you got to be really, really careful with these ribbon cables, because if this breaks, you are out of luck. So once that's forward, this comes right out. And I'm looking for any evidence of corrosion on it. Nothing. It looks clean. I also haven't powered this on yet, because when you know there's something rattling around inside of a system, it's really a good idea to take a look first. That way you don't end up accidentally, shorting the whole system out. So this one, just you rock it out gently. Try not to fool with it too much, because you really don't want to bend this, the edges of this ribbon cable too much. So that's everything. One thing you have to be aware of is when you pull the top off, this is going to remain soldered in place, because I'm not going to unsolder it just to take a look inside. So just remember not to pull too hard on this. You don't want to dislodge this unless you have a soldering iron. I'm not very good at soldering, so I'm not going to fool with it. So the way that you lift this off is, see these 4 posts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are little rubberized gaskets, and the whole thing moves up and down on them. And there's little teeth that catch on the side. So if you can manage to move to the side and like this, sorry, I had to pause the recording. My dog was making a lot of noise. If you can push to the side here and just kind of wiggle it free, it's kind of hard to describe without looking at it, but you can just kind of just jiggle it around, and these little teeth here are what catch. See that right there? Up underneath there. So I've removed this. You see it's still attached by that one wire, and well, what do you know? That's not good. The entire laser unit is just completely detached from everything. It just looks, this is fascinating. And this is what I was talking about earlier. This is the little, for the rack and pinion kind of movement that is driven by those gears down there. And this is the rail that it should be on. And look, it's just kind of wedged under there. So my feeling is that it must have been jostled pretty hard. So what I'm going to do is try to reassemble this. Hopefully all the parts are still here. But this railing here, you can see there's grease on it, is what goes through the side here. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit and you can see, or focus. So the laser unit itself should sit thusly, and this little railing should go right through here, and it should slide back and forth on it. And this piece is what meshes with the gear on the side there. And this little spring is what keeps it in contact with the laser unit and gives it a little bit of play. And this should just snap into here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to snap it into place. Okay. So you see that? It just sits like this. And like I said, this gives it a little bit of play along this set of teeth. And then this, if you can see, there's one screw there and one screw there. These screws come up and then the railing sits underneath them, and that's how they're held down. They both seem to be, well, this one's a little loose. Well, okay, this one could be loose and it could have come out that way. So there's a chance, but it's just got to be that it got thrown or dropped or something. So the way this works, and I'm obviously being careful not to touch the actual laser. The way this should work is we should be able to drop this in. And I wish I could show you a little bit more clearly what I'm doing. But this railing, okay, all right, okay. So it doesn't look like it's damaged at all. Like, I expected to see some sort of like broken piece of plastic where it came loose, but it looks to me like it fits back together pretty well. I'm going to hold it back up to the camera here. I'm going to put these screws in so it can hold the railing in. Whoops. It also, I just realized I didn't mesh it with, okay, so first it needs to go and interact with this railing, and then I can drop it in. I got a little ahead of myself. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right. Okay. See how it just slides back and forth, and you can see the gear moving. I will again hold this up so you can see what I just did. But I'm going to put these screws in to hold it down, and I guess I should just check and make sure that there's no break that might affect this railing being held in place. But I have to hold this kind of awkwardly because I don't want to pull on that cord. So here's what I did. This railing right here is held in place by that screw and this screw right here. And it had come loose. And so this entire assembly had come off. It's only hooked on here, right? It doesn't actually, it's not, that doesn't hold 360. See, there's a gap. See that? So if this railing comes loose, this whole thing falls out. But when you put the railing back in, do you see how these gears mesh together and drive it back and forth? It seems to me, this is fascinating, but it seems to me that this is, well, we don't know what's wrong with it, but we know that that's one big thing, not having a functioning laser unit. So assuming this is still functional, like once it gets powered up, there's a chance that that's all that is needed. Because like I said, I have no suspicion that there's any sort of, oh Christ, sorry, I bounced that around. I have no suspicion that there's any sort of water damage because there just isn't any evidence of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of see if I can get this back together. There we go. Sorry, I'm doing it off screen. So you just got to be careful to make sure that these ribbon cables go into the designated kind of holes. This one will go down through there. This one will go around the top. And you want to make sure that you don't, again, obstruct that cord there that controls the motor. And then you just find all the posts with these rubber bushings, and you just kind of push down. Oh, I think I dislodged this one by accident. You can see what I just did. I accidentally dislodged this little rubber bushing. I need to push it back into place. This is fascinating. I'm sure you're doing something you can't even see. There we go. So as long as these are on the posts that they're intended to be on, we should be cooking with gas. Okay, that's one, that's two, that's three, and that's four, I think. Well, no. Yeah, okay. So what you should see is that this has some play to it because these little rubber bushings, I called them gaskets earlier, that's not what I meant, but they provide some shock absorption for the whole unit. I think we're in good shape. Okay, so back down to the bottom. And now if you're doing like a full, essentially when you're doing a restoration on a GameCube, typically you want to kind of remove all the variables, right? So I typically clean everything if there's even a hint of dust or grime, but I'm telling you, this is just not, look at how clean this heatsink is. Typically there's grime and dust all through here. This thing may have just been turned on a couple times and then dropped, and then someone thought, well, this is junk now. This is fascinating. I've never seen anything like this before. I've done, again, like a dozen of these where I've bought them and put them back out into the world, and this is the first time I've ever seen something so clean, so beautiful inside be sold as junk. I mean, the seller, it seems they harvested the little badge off the top of this. This is odd. I bought one more from the same seller and the same thing, and they took the badge off. Maybe this is something that's valuable for, you know, fixing cases. It should look like this, just for the record, but they've taken the kind of badge out of it. You know, the case is a little beat up, but God, it's just perfect inside. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and reattach all these wires. Remember, this clip works thusly. It will, you have to, God, I'm trying to get focused. There you go. You have to push down on this. See how it's up right now? Once this is inside. So I'm going to put the cable inside as far as it will go without jostling it too much. And then I'm going to push down with my nails on this clamp, and you see it now, it's flush. Now it's flush with the connector, and this is securely in there. And you know, no sweat. That's a super nerve-wracking thing to do, so you'll get the hang of it. This, there's a rigid part right here, so you can just kind of push it into place like that. And there's your whole thing assembled. Now here's where I have to do the don't do this at home warning. Once you plug anything into the mains at your house, the main voltage, wall voltage, whatever you want to call it, whatever your country calls it, it becomes extremely dangerous. And so you have to be as careful as you can possibly be to avoid getting electrocuted. I would never encourage anyone to do what I'm doing unless you've done this a million times. What I'm going to do is I've just plugged this back in without the shielding because it's not, I want to make sure this works before I put it back together. So I put it back together the minimum amount where it will work. And I'm going to plug it in, and I'm going to be extraordinarily careful not to touch anything besides this catch here, which tells that the lid is closed, and this power button right here. This is plastic. This is plastic. I'm not touching anything metal. I don't have a death wish. In fact, I'm going to do it like this because I'm going to actually pull the camera phone out of this little holder and point it at my little test rig here, so you can see kind of what I'm seeing. I'm going to plug it into a TV here and run it. So in goes the video output, and now once the power is in, I'm not fooling around anymore. I'm going to be as careful as I possibly can. This power is going in. I'm pushing plastic only. All right, power's in. No more fooling around. I'm going to put in a test game, NBA Live 05. Put this on top. And that's okay. That's still connected. It's not a big deal. Pull the phone out of the holder here so you can see what I'm seeing. All right, so you see I have my TV set up here. It's plugged in. I'm going to take the catch with this left part of my hand. I'm going to press the power button. All right, it's spinning. That's important. You see the display? You're kidding. I heard the high-pitched sound that it makes. It works. It's reading just fine. It's reading. I'm astounded. There's one more time to confirm that it wasn't a fluke. It's reading. There it goes. All right. Well, I'm astounded. So what this means to me is that this GameCube was, and by the way, I'm going to go ahead and put my finger here on some plastic. I'm going to yank this power cord out. And one thing that you need to know is there's big capacitors down here in the power supply. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it on and off a bunch of times. I've heard that helps kind of deplete the energy stored in those capacitors so that you don't get shocked or worse. I'm not sure if that's actually real. I'm not an engineer, but you know, better safe than sorry. Yeah, I'm a little flabbergasted. I was hoping I'd be able to fix it on this video. I was not sure it'd be so so tidy of a fix. Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. It's just it had been dropped or something. I mean, obviously there's some sort of damage to this case on this corner. And when I opened it earlier, I didn't say anything, but a few little pieces of plastic came out. I can't pin down where they came from, but yeah, it seems to me like this was dropped. The owner said, it's broken. I don't want to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. And they just put it in a box somewhere and it sat there for 16 years or whatever it is now. And here we are. It's perfectly functional. In fact, this may be the most clean and functional GameCube I've ever come across. I may have to replace my kind of personal one with this one because it's just so perfect inside, which is fascinating to me. You know, you don't want anything that has any sort of creeping rust in it. So I'm very pleased. Hopefully this was informative and maybe a little entertaining. I'm going to go ahead just to complete the whole project. I'm going to go ahead and take this and finish, just put it back together. I'm going to put the heat shield back on this or whatever the hell this is, RF shield. I'm going to put it back on here. I'm going to screw everything back together. I'll probably fast forward and then I'll show you one more time it working. And then I think that's it. That's all there is. So just, you know, hang out if you want to see it kind of completed. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out. I had a good time. I'm going to continue to record videos whenever I get a mystery GameCube in from eBay or whatever, because I think it's fun just to kind of go in blind, and hopefully you think it's fun too. So thanks again. I'm going to fast forward and I'll just turn it back on one more time when it's complete. All right, she's back together. Laser is in the correct position. I'm kind of silently in awe of how lucky I got. You know, it may not have been the most interesting fix. Typically, you know, you have issues with the laser that you can clean it, or you can adjust the potentiometer on there to give it a little bit more juice. To allow it to read discs again. You can swap out parts. I've got a big old box full of kind of spare parts that I've taken from GameCubes that I've bought that just are completely destroyed, you know, totally water damaged or whatever, and not salvageable. But in this case, you know, you got lucky, and it just so happens to be the first time I decided to record a video. So call it serendipity. But got the game in there. I'm just gonna pull this back here so that you can see, and then turn the TV on. Sorry, the sun's setting in this window over here, so the light's a little harsh. But we've got this, and on she goes. And it sounds, the laser makes a very, or the spindle makes a very distinctive kind of high pitched squeal when it starts to read a game. And I don't know what to tell you. It works. It works now. So anyway, thanks for coming along on this journey inside this cube with me. I've actually picked up another GameCube from the same seller. And I might if there's any interest in this at all, I might record a video of me attempting to fix this one. Again, for some reason they took the top. Man, that light is really bad, isn't it? Well, hopefully you can see something. They took a little badge off of it, which is strange. This one, I didn't hear anything rattling around, so I powered it on when I took it out of the box, and it turned on just fine. The lid is just broken. See that? That shouldn't happen. So, and inside it's pretty clean. The stickers are all in great shape, you know, things that would indicate that it wasn't just destroyed. So there's a chance this one, there's a chance this seller just is sitting on slightly damaged GameCubes and just waiting for people like me to get a hold of them and make the quick fix. I mean, obviously aesthetically, they're not ready to sell. I've got to find a couple of these badges or put them in a different case. I've had a couple of case parts. I can swap the case parts out, you know, so that there's, you're not missing that badge, because it's, you know, it's not a very attractive thing. I don't want to sell an incomplete GameCube. So so I might pop a new top case on this one. I don't have a black one currently to swap out, so there's a chance I may have to go looking for one of these badges. But yeah, it's yeah, let me know. You know, God, Lee, I've been watching YouTube for a long time, but it feels weird to ask for comments like they do. Obviously, this is not a money-making scheme for me. I'm just doing this because I'm trying to feed the community that fed me. You know, the reason why I got into this is because I was watching videos about people fixing GameCubes and fixing small electronics, and it just seemed really interesting. And here I am, you know, 6-8 months later, I'm knee deep in it. I've got all these parts and all these GameCubes, and I'm just kind of doing it to stay sane. So anyway, yeah, let me know if you want to see me take a whack at this one. This may require some kind of Frankensteining, some parts replacement, who knows. But anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate you.